Hey everyone, and welcome back to another edition of NASCAR DFS Preview. I'm AustYn.
And I'm Yacs.
And we are going out west to Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the Pennzoil 400. Hence the Joey Logano hat over here. We might
Pennzoil.
Yeah. We might be having a lot of Joey picks this week. Joey's probably going to be a popular driver, by the way, and we'll dissect that later in the lineups here. But for those who actually watched the videos, last week on the Draftkings side, I almost had the biggest week by far that I'd ever had in terms of DFS. Very unfortunate for Cole Custer to pop a tire or two to go. I ended up winning money still because it was such a good lineup and Byron was out front dominating the race. I did not expect that, to be honest with you. Byron was my last choice, if you remember me talking about that, but that was great. That team looked really fast. So hopefully we can keep that momentum going into this week. Another mile-and-a-half track, a totally different track than Homestead, by the way. It's Las Vegas is like 18 to 20 degrees banking. It's progressive. Most of the time, they're going to be running full throttle around the track. So that's something that's different than Homestead. More of a tire wear track, but I do think tires are going to be very important at this one. They have 9 sets for the race. If you watch the truck race, too, they were cording the tires pretty... I mean, just about every team was. Now, I don't know if that was because it was a fresh track and they're just trying to get the rubber down. Maybe it'll be okay in the Cup race, but that's to be seen. I actually think it will be kind of a factor.
Yeah.
DraftKings, in terms of their pricing, it looked a little different this week. Again, we don't have qualifying, which I'm hearing rumors that qualifying is coming back next year. They're doing this really to kind of have budget cut measures to help the teams out without practice and everything like that. So I think we're kind of getting used to this strategy anyway, though. So you have anything to add on that there?
Well, to capitalize on what you said about last week's DraftKings lineup, my top driver was down to Joey Logano and Martin Truex. And if I would have went Truex, we would have had a really great week. But we went Logano. It was a bad pitch strategy in the end, and it just didn't really work out. So hopefully things will be different at Las Vegas this week.
Yeah, it was kind of shocking that Penske, they were really fast at the beginning, and then they just fell off. Like, it was like,
Yeah, they took a late pit stop, and it just basically ruined it.
Yeah.
They were just kind of, I don't know what to say. It just kind of ruined it.
Yeah. It's like when the sun went down in Miami.
It was just the wrong strategy.
Yeah. The teams got, like Chris Buescher went up there and stole the lead. I mean, it wasn't like it was pit strategy or anything. It was very shocking. This year's going to be different. I can already tell, especially with the winners this year. I mean, Michael Mcdowell was top 10 the whole night. And even heard Joey Logano on Sirius XM this week saying that Michael Mcdowell was competing. Like, it wasn't, he was like one of the faster forwards, other than maybe Harvick. I think Harvick finished above him. That might have been it.
The 2021 race winners have a combined 4 wins.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a wild season, it feels like.
Yep. So a lot of names that you wouldn't expect are already locking themselves in the playoffs. So I think I mentioned this. They have 9 sets of tires for the Las Vegas race, 267 laps. So it's the same amount of laps as Homestead. So also the same tire model as the September race, although I found contradicting stories on that. J-Ski is what I use typically for the Goodyear tire notes. And it was like they said they brought a different right compound, but then they said it was the same compound as last year. That doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I'm taking that with a grain of salt. Misinformation to me. I can't figure out what's correct there. So let's just go ahead and look at the lineups here. So DraftKings has given us Kyle Busch as the most expensive driver. I think he was the most expensive last week. So he's starting in 14th at 11.4. Martin Truex Jr. starting in 4th at 11.1. Ryan Blaney starting in 26th at 10.8. Chase Elliott 8th at 10.6. Brad Keselowski starting in 10th at 10.3. And rounding out our 10K drivers, we have 6 again this week. That's Joey Logano starting in 15th at 10,000.
To butt in, sorry.
Oh,
yeah, it seems like FanDuel and DraftKings, they're very similar to last week. Like Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex, they were all at the top, and it looks like they basically just copied and pasted from the Homestead lineups.
Pretty much, and I know that they use some type of formula to kind of decide. Now, Tylerettic was a lot cheaper this week, but it's like because he finished so well, his starting position was great. So
right.
It's like it's going to be like this. It's going to be repetitive probably with the salaries. Now, looking at your top tier, what I typically do, what I've done in the past for the past couple of years in these videos, is I normally look at my top tier drivers, go by tiers, tier 1, 2, so on and so forth. And this year I'm doing a little different. I'm trying to pick drivers that like basically all 6 that could win the race. It really benefited me last week. That's really what I was trying to do. I went really aggressive going Cole Custer starting in 10th, and it was panning out until, the end. And I'm trying to not. I like to consider that as an outlier, and that we'll continue to finish well week in and week out, like we always do. And thank you for all the listeners that watch our videos, by the way. So hopefully we'll get more people watching it. But we got
we appreciate you.
Yeah. So the first pick in my brain, looking at Racing Reference is what I typically do, and look at average finishes. Also, tandem stats or tandem draft is something that I found on Jayski's website, and I had heard of it before. They give pretty good stats too, like average running position, laps led are pretty key. They also throw out the Xfinity and truck stats too for the rookies and drivers that don't have a lot of Cup experience.
And a similar website that I use that's similar to Tandem is, I believe it's called frcs.pro. They show every race's stats, and they go into detail about DraftKings and FanDuel and show how it's broken down over the years and how everything changes from race to race. And it's really helpful if you're looking into making lineups.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and break down like the way my thinking was this week. When I saw Kevin Harvick in first, and he was under 10K, Harvick is very good here. But it's one of those things where Harvick, when he's on the pole, I know in the past couple years, if he's on the pole, a lot of people pick him. But he's not qualifying on the pole. You have to keep that in mind. So he's starting in first because he's performed so well this year, really. Not that his car is that fast that week, because you have no idea. Now, likely that Harvick leads at least 50 laps, pretty highly. But last year he started on the pole here and finished 10th and didn't lead a lap.
Yeah.
So you could have that happen, and that's a terrible pick at 9-7.
Yep.
You get -9 already, and then you get 10th, so he's like 20-some points, 30.
Yeah, and he's 14,000 on FanDuel, so
yeah,
he's the top guy. Yeah.
Yeah, so what I really looked at, the top driver at this track is Joey Logano. His average finish is 8.4. He's got 2 wins. He's got 10 top 10s and 15 starts. So 2/3 of his starts, he gets a top 10. Now, I know that Joey Logano is going to be chalky. I know that Ryan Blaney is going to be chalky, because Ryan Blaney's average finish is 9.7, not far off. Now, he actually has some Wood Brothers starts in there, so honestly, he might be a little better than Logano. He doesn't have quite the amount of starts yet, but just like Logano, 2/3 of his races end up in top 10s. So, thinking on this, in terms of value, Ryan Blaney's just too hard to pass up. So I went ahead and picked Ryan Blaney. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I tried to avoid picking Joey Logano. I wanted to try to see what I could get out of my lineups, because I knew Logano, that's all they've been talking about all week. And I understandably so, but I know that he's going to be at 30-plus owned. And Blaney might be a little lower, actually, because Chase and Truex, all these drivers up here are very good at this track, so it's going to be a little different to tell. But I'm going with Ryan Blaney, starting in 26 at 10.8. I mean, 2/3 of the time, top 10. He's just really good at this track. He's got a very good Xfinity average finish. I can't remember it right off the top of my head, but it's definitely a top 5 average finish. So that's what I went with there, and average salary is at 78. So like I typically do, I'll just go ahead and scroll down here at the bottom. Now, Las Vegas is very well known for long green flag runs. So horsepower is very key. Track position is very key. So you don't want a driver that's in a team that has lower tier engine programs. So any of the Rick Ware guys, you probably want to avoid. And then that leads us to really Justin Haley, and he's with Spire Motorsports. Haley's getting some Cup starts, and I don't know how he'll perform. I mean, he might end up finishing around 25th or so. That's pretty high, honestly, starting position for him. One of the drivers that I was very intrigued by was Corey Lejoy. He's starting in 33rd. Now, Corey Lejoy, average finish of 25.5. He had one really good finish here where he was like 16th. And if he could do that here, that would be a great value. But I just don't know how that car is going to perform, to be honest with you. I know Lejoy has made comments that it's a faster car, but I really want to see it first.
He has 2 top 20s.
Yeah.
I think he might have finished 16th twice.
Okay.
He was either 16th
That's
and
right.
18th, or he's got 2 top 20s. I do know that.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so I missed one race there. But I know J.J. Yaley ran this car some, I'm pretty sure. Reed Sorensen would drive it. It was really the 77 last year, to be honest with you. But one driver that's right above me is Chris Buescher, DraftKings. How can they price Chris Buescher at $6,400? He's starting in 18th spot. Let me tell you a little bit about Chris Buescher. His average finish is 18th, so he's starting right where he finishes normally. He hasn't had a worse finish than 18th in his last 6 races here. So the only reason why he's got an average finish of 18th is because the first couple races that he had here, he didn't really finish all that well. So I like Chris Buescher. I mean, I don't think that was a fluke last week. Now, if he went up there and got it on pit strategy, but he didn't. He went up and passed the leaders. Brad Keselowski, Joe Logano. He went right by him. So I'm going with Chris Buescher. 18th spot. I think he'll contend for a top 15, and that's really all I ask for those lower tier drivers. And that helps our average remaining salary out at $8,200. Scrolling up through here, I'm going to cut it off here at Chase Briscoe. So Chase Briscoe is an intriguing option for me. He's very good here. He won both races in the Xfinity last year, and he actually finished top 5 or 10 in the truck race. He might have had 2 starts, but either way, it was very good finishes in the truck series. He's starting in 24th, which is pretty good. The one thing that concerns me about Chase Briscoe, doing this from experience, I know that Chase drives the wheels off a car. He's very aggressive, and I think those cording of the tires, it scares me a little bit. And I think that you might have Briscoe having something happen towards the end. And that's kind of why I faded away from him. There's a driver a little more expensive than him named Chris Trabel starting in 16th in that 20 car. And I'm going with Chris Trabel at $7,700. Xfinity average finishes 5th. Now, if you exclude his Levine family racing starts last year, which he's in a lot faster car this year. His last 7 starts with Xfinity and truck, he had no worse than 14th. And I know you take that with a grain of salt because it's totally different. But Chris Trabel, I firmly believe, is a top 16 driver in this field. And that car is going to be really fast. So I look for Chris Trabel to get a top 10. If he gets a top 15, honestly, that would be great. That's fine with me. But Bell could win this race. And he's already won a race this year. That was very shocking. And I think it's, Bell's starting to come around. Now, average salary is now $8,300. And you look here, you have William Byron starting in 2nd, after that dominating race last week. Kurt Busch starting in 7th. He won here last year. Tylerettic in 11th. Reddick is not very good here in the Cup Series, but Xfinity was okay. Dillon 12th. Dillon is about where he probably will end up. Yeah. And again, I'm fading Briscoe. I know Briscoe will be heavily owned. This is definitely more of a tournament strategy, I believe. So Benedetto starting in 30th. Kind of like last week, he was starting way back in the field, and I know a lot of people picked him, but he didn't really perform. This is a track where he finished 2nd at twice last year, both races, and I think people are really going to love that. They're like, oh, that's an automatic pick, but $9,000 is a lot to pay for Matt Benedetto. I don't think he's anywhere near Alex Bowman in terms of equipment and driver talent at this track. I just don't see it happening. Bowman was awesome on 1.5 miles last year. And Eric Almarola is right below him at 8,600, starting in 28th. And Eric Almarola has an average finish of 21.7 here, which is not great. But since he's been in Stewart-Haas, he's had a couple decent finishes here and there. And truthfully, Almarola's in a car that could win, and he's got enough positive place differential where I could see him getting, if he finished 15th, that's 13 points added to a 15th place. So definitely below 9K. And one thing that I looked at, I talked about tandem draft. His average running position here is 15th or better in his last couple starts. So he hangs around the top 15, and that's all I really ask for with Eric Almarola. So I'm going to go ahead and pick him at 8,600. That gives us an average salary of $8,250. Now, moment of truth. I really wanted to go Corey Lejoy here. And that gave me a 10-2 salary, which is Joey Logano. Brad Keselowski was one that I was thinking, teetering going on. Honestly, Truex and Chase. Chase is very good here, average running position. He's always in the top 10. But Corey Lejoy, the horsepower and everything, I still wanted to pick 6 drivers that could possibly win this race. And if you're to compare Las Vegas to any track, to me it's like Chicagoland, a little bit like Kentucky. Who won at Kentucky last year? Cole Custer. Cole Custer starting in 20th. His average finish is 20th here. He doesn't have a lot of sample size, but Xfinity Series, he was just like Christopher Bell, honestly. 7th place, which was a couple spots lower than Bell, but I got Stuart Haas cars at a $6,000 price. That's amazing. So I said car plural, but it's a car. Cole Custer. So $6,500. Even though it was heartbreaking to see Cole Custer fall down that leaderboard, I'll just say it was a very big loss for what I was going to do, but I didn't have that money, so it's not really a loss, I guess. So going back to the whale, I love picking Cole Custer, especially at that 20th spot. Feel like top 15's feasible. He actually got up to 4th in the Homestead race. I think that they're turning a corner, and he's going to be competitive week in and week out. So got him in 20th. And that's going to lead us to our last pick. And if you remember my last pick last week, I had William Byron left over. Just pulled the trigger on it just because of starting position. If you go up to 10,000, who's priced there? Joey Logano. So it's either Joey Logano, Harvick, or Larson. And Larson's actually very good here as well. His average finish is 10.8. 6 top 10s and 9 starts, just like Blaney. But starting third, that's a little iffy. That's a little high for him. I don't know if Larson can go up there and dominate the race like that starting position warrants. So I'm going with Joey Logano. Joey Logano is the master of Las Vegas. So I couldn't go away from it. I feel like I'm going to be part of the crowd there, but hopefully I swung some in there with like Bell and Buescher. I don't know. You think people are going to go Buescher this week?
Well, I think it's going to be different for FanDuel, I feel like, because his price point. Yeah. I mean, he is pretty cheap and he has a lot of value on DraftKings, but he is very difficult to pass up on FanDuel.
I mean, he looks really fast last week. I just don't think he had like 40 fastest laps too. I mean, you add that all up, it's crazy. And I know he started in like 12th or something last week. It was top 15.
I don't remember where he started,
but I think he's like here to stay.
I believe it was 16 or 17. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. That's where he started.
Well, he's a champion.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pass that up. You have a very talented field. You got Briscoe didn't win the title last year. Cindric did, but he probably should have.
He finished 12th. I mean, he started 12th.
Yeah, okay. So, and you have Suarez, champion. I mean, I'm looking through here. Buescher, champion. Bell. Did Bell win a championship? I don't think so. Reddick won it twice.
Custer did, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he?
Either way. I think Reddick won twice.
I mean, it had a lot of guys that competed for the championship in the Xfinity Series,
Byron.
And the Truck Series. Yeah,
Byron last week. I mean, there's a lot of champions in the field. So, I really like Joe Logano there in 15th. I like Cole Custer in 20th. I feel very good about this lineup. So I'll just go ahead and clean it up. Stop yakking and let Yachts do the FanDuel lineup here. So
yakking Yachts.
So got Ryan Blaney starting in 26 at 10.8. Great cash game option. Too hard to pass up in 26 there. I think they're going to rebound this week. Joey Logano starting in 15th at 10,000. When I pick him here, I'm ultimately picking him to win the race, probably. Him or Blaney. So then we go to our third driver is Eric Almarola, starting in 28th at 8.6. Scrolling down here to 16th, 7.7. Christopher Bell. A little bit farther, we've got two guys in the 6,000 range, Cole Custer at 6.5 and Chris Buescher at 6.4. So that's our lineup here. Everyone is starting outside the top 15, which Vegas is very important for track position. That scares me a little bit, but I feel like I have 6 drivers that can win the race.
A lot of fast cars there.
Yep. So turn it over to Yachts.
Well, we're just going to dive right in. One thing that it seems like it's becoming a theme with these mile-and-a-half tracks. Well, we've only had one, but it seems like it's going to be a theme throughout the year. You can find yourself having a lot of salary left over on FanDuel. I was tinkering with some lineups this week, and I made some lineups that, I mean, I didn't seal them or anything, but some of these lineups I had 3,000 left over. 2 and 3,000, and that's not really what you want. You want to pick the best drivers possible, but I feel like you can have a lot left over. But I feel like don't let that sway you. Don't see that remaining salary and feel like you have to jump up. And have to spend it. I think there's a lot of potential saving money this week. As you can see, these tier ones, I usually cut it off at 12,000. Harvick, Truex, Logano, Elliott, and Hamlin are all your tier one drivers. I feel like FanDuel, it's interesting the way they do their salaries. It's weird, but it's interesting. Kevin Harvick, I feel like they're basically saying, whatever you do, do not pick Kevin Harvick, because 14,000 starting from the one spot. I mean, that doesn't yield you a lot of positive potential unless he leads a lot of laps, which could happen. I'm not ruling it out, but
And it's not as important on FanDuel.
well, it's not.
Laps led.
It's not, and
But finishing position is. So.
it is. They're basically saying just don't pick him, which is it's interesting. You can make it work. You can pick him and say, forget what you're saying, pick him. But 14,000, that's a lot to pay for him.
Steep.
That's a lot to pay for a guy. Not just him, but it's the number one starting spot. That's crazy, I think. But you could make a lineup work with Harvick. I tried a couple things, and you could make it work and have a decent lineup. I usually pick one guy from tier one right off the bat, and he's going to be chalky, 15th starting spot, but I feel like you can't pass him up.
That hat.
Yeah, you got the hat. Joey Logano, starting 15th. Like AustYn said, he is one of the best drivers at Las Vegas. It is his best track, his best oval track. And we'll get to that later on with a couple of the other guys that I'm going to pick. But in his last 6 races, Joey Logano has a 6th finishing average. He has won the last 2 Pennzoil 400s. So he could make it a three-peat.
That's the name of the race.
For the spring race. And another interesting stat about Joey Logano, he has led at least one lap in the last 6 races. The last race, I think he only led 1 lap, but he's averaging around 60. I want to say 60 laps per race. So he's dominant, and that could yield you anywhere from 5 to 10 points, depending on if he gets up to the lead, how long he can stay up in the lead, and how long he can just stay up there and run consistently well. It's hard to pass up. 13,000, you're paying for 14 more spots for $1,000 less as compared to Kevin Harvick. So I think he'll be picked a lot, but I don't think you can pass him up. We're going to move all the way down to the bottom. Like AustYn said, equipment matters. These 2,000 salary guys, don't look at them. I'd say do not look at them, because they just don't have the equipment to get a lot of positive potential yield. You can scroll up, and Corey Lejoy's there. Really wanted to pick Corey Lejoy. Like I was saying, you can tinker with some lineups and have 3,000 left over. Corey Lejoy is a decent option. I think he can finish around the 20th finishing position. That's not out of the question. I think Spire is good enough to be in the middle of the pack. And he's got 2 top 20s, like I said earlier. He's decent there. But FanDuel, I feel like they don't want you to take risks as compared to DraftKings. I feel like you can take a lot more risk in DraftKings and it's not going to hurt you. I feel like if you take risk in FanDuel, it's going to hurt you. Just how their scoring is and how their salaries are based. But we're going to move up. Justin Haley's in a similar spot. I think if Justin Haley were around Corey Lejoy in that starting spot, I believe he's 33rd. Yeah. If he was around 33rd, I would say consider him, pick him. But he's not. 4,000's not a bad price for him either. We're going to move up. Michael McDowell, he's one of the 2 drivers that has a top 10 finish this year, surprisingly enough. But doing my research, I think it comes to an end this week. He is not great at Las Vegas. It's one of his worst tracks. I'd just say avoid Michael McDowell. But hey, he's had a crazy year. I say, well, he could get a top 15 as well as he's been running this year, and I don't think it's a fluke, to be honest. I think he's definitely in the playoffs, but he's on the back end for sure. I think he's around a 15th place car every week, I feel like now. Eric Jones, I think in 29th starting spot, 4,700. That is very cheap. I think a lot of people will look in this range right here. I'll scroll up. I think a lot of people will be looking in this range, maybe get one or two of these drivers between Stenhouse and Eric Jones in that range. Bubba Wallace, he had a top 10 finish in last year's Pennzoil 400. I think he finished 6th. So, and that could mean something for Eric Jones because it's the same car. $5,000. Chris Buescher is priced 18th starting spot. I feel like as opposite as to what they're doing with Harvick, they're doing an opposite strategy with Chris Buescher. 18th, they're saying pick Chris Buescher, but I'm gonna avoid him because I think people will pick him quite a bit because they saw last week. Hey, he ran well. He ran very well at Homestead, and Las Vegas is actually one of his best tracks, his oval tracks. I think they're gonna pick him a lot, and he could get a top 10, but I don't think it. I think you can find more potential. Potential up higher, But there's a lot of good value, I think, right here. But it was weird this week because you see these guys. These are the guys you kind of look to if they're starting in a bad spot, but none of them are really starting in a bad spot except Eric Jones. And they're not. I feel like they're not gonna make too much of a climb as the race goes on. We're gonna move up though. Tylerettic, he had a come from behind, almost win. If he had 10 more laps, he would have won that thing. He was very fast there in the end, but he's not had success at Las Vegas. I think he got in an accident in the last Las Vegas race, and he finished 18th, I think, in the spring race at the Pennzoil 400. Right. I think he finished on the lead lap, but 11th is just a little too high, I think. I think he needs to prove a little more at this track to be a viable option. Cole Custer, I considered Cole Custer. He's ran well here in the past. Austin Dillon's ran well here in the past, but 12th, I think that's where he's ultimately going to end up, like Austin said. Christopher Bell, this could be the surge that his career is going to have. This could be his surge year. But 16th, I think that's a great value at 8,500, 16th starting spot. But we're gonna decline him this week. I think a lot of your lineups are gonna have either or Benedetto or Almarola. Some could have both. They're good price points. I forget what you said Benedetto was. I think he was like 90. How much was he?
9,000.
9,000.
On DraftKings. Yeah.
That's high on DraftKings. He is cheap on FanDuel. 7,800. I feel like you got to pick him. Feel like you have to pick him. 7,800, starting in the 30th starting spot. In his last 4 races, he has an 11.5 average finish. Like Austin said, he finished second in the last 2 Las Vegas races. Will he compete for the win? I say no. He probably won't compete for the win, but he's proven that he can get close. And that's what you want. You want proof that they can be up there and potentially race for the win, at least potentially race for a top 5. And he proved that last year, I feel like. I think he'll be picked a lot, but what are you going to do? I feel like you got to pick these guys. Almarola's in a similar boat. He hasn't run as well in the last couple races as Benedetto, but he runs solid here. He can get you a top 10, definitely a top 15. I think a top 15 would be worth it, but top 10's not out of the question. we're gonna go down a little bit, and we're gonna pick Chase Briscoe. And 24th starting spot. Austin had a little concerns about Briscoe, but I feel like he could have a good race, and I feel like you're gonna miss out on potential if you don't pick him at 7,000. Starting in the 24th starting spot, I think he finished. Let me look. He finished 18th last week. He didn't really run well up until the end. I say 18th, if you consider that well. I think you can get a top 15 today. Well, I say today in the race, in the Pennzoil 400. I think he can get a top 15, and I think that would be worth it at $7,000. We're going to move up a little bit. William Byron, last week's race winner at Homestead, starting in the second spot. I think he'll probably be one of the least picked drivers in the second starting spot. It's not one of his best tracks, but you could take a chance on him. I think he'll actually run well. I think he'll compete in the top 10, but we'll see. I'm not exactly sure how to approach him at Las Vegas, but we're gonna move up. The Busch brothers back to back. Kyle's at 10.5. Kurt is at 10,000. Kurt Busch, Las Vegas. Surprising. They're both from Las Vegas. They were born and raised in Las Vegas. Kurt Busch, this is his worst track, surprisingly, and it's by a pretty good margin. It's his worst track. Kyle's not as bad, but it's not one of his best tracks. I think a lot of people are going to pick Kyle Busch because he's Kyle Busch. He's one of the better drivers out there, but I think you need to avoid Kyle Busch this week because like I said, it's not one of his best tracks. And even though the 14th starting spot, it's pretty appealing, I say stay away from Kyle Busch this week. I'm going to see if I can scroll up. Yep. We have 11-1 on average per driver to pick from. So we're going to go back down and scroll up. You have a lot of guys that can compete for the win when you're looking up here. I say avoid Harvick because I think he'll have a good race, but 14,000, I think you can get better value out of him. Better value out of your lineup than picking Harvick and then picking a lower tier driver. Brad Keselowski, I'm just going to go ahead and pick him. 11-3, starting in the 10th spot. And in my research, I found that most of your race winners are starting around 10th. I think in the last 6, the average starting spot is like 9, or it's between like 9 and 12. So this may be a sign, it may not be, but he runs very well here. He actually, in the last 6, he is the best driver at Las Vegas, and Joey Logano is second. So he's kind of had a little bad luck this year, but I think this could be a week he turns it around. I really considered Chase Elliott. He's had some bad luck here at this track, but he runs pretty well at this track. I think in the last 2 races at Las Vegas, he led 70 laps. In that range, 70 laps. And that's 7 extra points. 8th starting spot, he could, top 5 is definitely not out of the question. 12.5, that's a pretty cheap price actually for him, the former champion, the reigning champion. Denny Hamlin in the 6th starting spot. I had a stat about him. He's only, I believe, in his career, it may not be in his career, but I believe when he starts within the top 10, he does not finish in the top 10. He's only done it once, and that was in the last race. So I say avoid Denny Hamlin. Obviously he runs well at most tracks. I say avoid him, though, because history tells us that when he starts in the top 10, he does not finish in the top 10. Larson runs well here, starting in 3rd. I think it's a little too risky starting in 3rd. I think he could compete in the top 10 for sure, but I would stay away in the 3rd starting spot. So we have 10-9 left for our driver to spend, and we're just going to go with Blaney. He has a 9.2 average finish in his last 6. 3 of those are top 5s. And along with Logano and Benedetto, these are his best tracks. Las Vegas is his best track on the oval circuit. So I think this is going to be a chalky lineup, but I think this is the lineup for a tournament strategy here, because you have a lot of potential of movement up to the top. You have, I think, viably 3 guys that are going to compete for the win. The 2 Pennzoil drivers, Logano and Blaney. And surprisingly enough, this is an all-Ford lineup. So I think the Fords are going to be fast. Like we were mentioning earlier, Briscoe, he is aggressive here, but he has a 5.2 average finish in the Xfinity Series in his last 4. But as we're on that note, we're going to clean this up. So right off the bat, Logano, he's one of the best here. He's led a lap in every race in the last 6. So look for him to be up front in the end. Going to go down, Brad Keselowski at 11.3. 5.3 average finish in his last 6. And I have another little tidbit about Brad Keselowski. He is one of 3 drivers in the last 6 races to finish on the lead lap. It is he, Logano, and Martin Truex Jr. They've all finished on the lead lap. So you want guys that are going to be up at the top. You want guys that are going to be completing every lap, and you want guys that could compete for the win. And I think Brad K fills all those spots. Ryan Blaney, that 26 starting spot is just too hard to pass up. He runs well. He runs well a lot of tracks, but he really runs well here. And it's his best track on the oval circuit. Matt Benedetto, I think he's going to be picked a lot starting from the 30th spot, but I feel like you can't avoid him, especially at this price at $7,800. Finished second in his last 2 races at Las Vegas, and I say viably 3 options that are going to win. I think he's proven he could be the 4th option. I think, well, you finish second in back-to-back races. I feel like you've more than earned the respect to viably compete for the win. You're in that category. And Chase Briscoe. He won both of the Xfinity races in 2020 at Las Vegas. Like I said, he has a 5.2 average finish in his last 4. Runs well. He's aggressive. But a little bit of concern, as Austin pointed out, the tires could be not so great for Briscoe. We'll see as that progresses in the race, but here's what I have lined up for you. And that'll finish it up.
All right, so as you can tell here, we both really picked a lot of Ford drivers.
Yeah.
Ford is just historically so good at this track that it's hard to pass up. I mean, Yachts had 4 Penske drivers out of 5. So they're just really
3.
good here.
I had 3.
Well, Wood Brothers.
Well, yeah, technically. Yeah.
Yeah, same.
They're all Ford. They're all Ford, though.
Yeah, they're all built in the same
right
place.
Yep.
Near Mortville.
Yeah.
But really, this is... Well, I guess this is what we're going with here. Briscoe, the thing about it's really more of a gut feeling. It's not necessarily something that I'm thinking of. I just know a lot of times Briscoe, even though he won 9 races last year, he just drove so hard.
Yeah.
That's just a feeling that I have about this track. But anyway, if you like what you see here, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Sports Chief. Hit the bell notification. That way you know whenever our videos go up live. Also follow us on Twitter at The Sports Chief and on Instagram as well. So yeah, that pretty much concludes our Pennzoil 400 DFS preview, and I hope you have a good race weekend.
All right, thank you.